Today's session is on the leadership team tools and reports. So again, we're going to talk about the things that leadership teams generally do to enter stuff into BNI Connect and the reports that we're going to be able to pull to review all of the wonderful data that we're putting into BNI Connect. Now, that being said, I do need to give you guys a caveat about this particular webinar. That caveat is that different regions in BNI do things slightly differently. Even though we are all running the same BNI system and we're all using the same BNI Connect platform, there is some customization out there that happens. For example, in our region, my region, I am a member, by the way, here in Rhode Island. In our region, the vice presidents enter all of the POMS reports on a weekly basis. I do know for a fact that the Miami, Florida region, they have a special person designated in the chapter called the statistics tracker that goes in and does that part of the vice president's duties. So they have delegated that responsibility to somebody else. Similarly, in Rhode Island here, the visitor hosts are the ones that enter all the visitors into BNI Connect, whereas in some regions that falls into the responsibility of the president, the secretary treasurer. So there's all these different kind of things, but regardless of who's doing the action, the process itself stays the same. So regardless of who's doing it, we're still going to go to the same function in BNI Connect, and we're still all going to be looking at the same screens. So let's take a look at BNI Connect with our leadership team glasses on. Now, the first thing that I want to share with you guys, this is the home screen. This is where you log into BNI Connect. As a leadership team person, especially as a vice president, you may get a lot of questions about statistics and, how come it's only showing me as having X number of referrals and things like that. Couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to the home screen here. I'm not going to go too deep into it because we do a whole webinar just based on the online referrals process, but the numbers here on the home screen are for the member. So the member can see all of their statistics, all of their POMs, the referrals received and given, and thank you for closed business and one-to-ones and things like that. Now, hopefully your members are entering those slips themselves because that makes the VP's job a whole lot easier. For example, they just click on submit a referral slip, they fill out the details, and then they turn that slip in. Now, what happens when they turn that in is it does go into the queue for this week's meeting. So I meet on Thursdays. My chapter meets on Thursdays. So if I was to submit a slip now, it would go into the queue for this weekly meeting. So a lot of members get confused because they're like, well, I just submitted a referral, but my referrals given haven't changed any. It still says 36 here. It didn't go to 37, and it's still showing as draft in my reports. Well, again, that's going to stay that way until after this week's meeting and attendance has been taken and things like that, and the report has been officially submitted. A good way to troubleshoot this, by the way, is with this first report here. It says My Personal Participation Report. Now, if a member is saying, hey, how come my stats aren't lining up correctly, they're not showing right on the screen, this Personal Participation Report is a great thing to ask them to pull for themselves in order to help you troubleshoot it as a leadership team. So you can go in there and say, hey, which week is it that has the error on it? And they can go through line by line and say, for example, a lot of times what happens is when you're entering the POMS report, instead of entering $1,000 into thank you for closed business, 1,000 one-to-ones get entered, so it just gets put in the wrong column. But trying to figure out which week that was, this becomes a lot easier using this report. You can see exactly which week that happened on, so you know which week to correct. It also has sponsored members and any training information, so different training events that they've taken. It's also important to know that for the slips purposes, only members have access to their own slips details. So as a member, I can go in and review my own referral slips, and I can go back as far as I want to in time and take a look at any of those referrals that I've passed. Now, a lot of leadership teams, they say, well, I'd love to look at the details of those referrals. Well, that information is private. This does have my client informations and my client phone numbers and any details about them. So this isn't something that we can share with leadership teams or with other people. We're only able to share what's in the POMS report, and I can show you that you can get a little bit of detail from the SLIPS audit report that's part of the POMS report. All right, so essentially this is the home screen. Again, this is mostly member details, so you'll be able to, again, if you want the nitty-gritty just on how the online SLIPS programs work, you can check out the recording of that particular webinar. But are there any questions about this, about the home screen or the reports available on the home screen or how the online SLIPS work before I move on to actually some of the data entry portions of BNI Connect? All right, I don't see any questions coming in, so let's go on to the next part of this, and that's going to be some, again, the data entry things. So here's the deal. I have heard a number of times in the past that, yeah, BNI Connect is not the most user-friendly system out there. I understand. In order to get to some of this other functionality, we do have to kind of put on our discovery gear here and go beyond the home page. And for that, we're going to have to dive into some of these menu items along the top here. So along the top, you should see some icons and some words. It says this is the home screen, which will bring you back here. And then you'll see Network, Operations, Reports, Tools, and Admin. So this is going to be where all of the other functionality in BNI Connect is hidden. It's going to be under these various menu items. Now, Network, this is going to have stuff that has to really do with networking and interacting with other people in BNI Connect. So that's going to have your groups, your connections, testimonials, things like that. So again, network is going to be the networking components. Where we're going to spend almost all of our time is going to be under the next two things. So we have operations and reports. Operations is really the day-to-day management of your chapter. So operations is the day-to-day management of your chapter. That's where we're going to find all of our data entry stuff, okay? Reports are always read-only. We're only ever going to be able to get information back out using the reports. So anytime we want to enter something or do something in BNI Connect, what we need to do is go to operations. So even when we're talking about things like, well, I got to do the POMS report, counterintuitively, we're not going to go to reports for that. If we're doing data entry, we have to go to operations. All right, so first thing, let's go ahead and take a look at what's available under the operations menu. So if I go to operations, I should see a bunch of things down the left-hand side. And those are all the different categories of management that we can do. And on the right-hand side is another box that kind of has these sub-menus of what we can do. So for example, we have manage visitors and all the different things to do with the visitor process. We have meeting management, having to do with the chapter meeting. Manage memberships, which has to do with managing the details of somebody's memberships in the system. Managing goals, and again, we're going to talk about the goals program tomorrow on tomorrow's webinar for chapter goals, so I'm not going to go into that today. We have the mentoring program where we can assign a mentor and a mentee. We have a couple of functions under create email, and then finally we have manage news. Manage news is a special function having to do with the chapter website, so I'm not going to cover that today either. But before we jump into some of these functions, again, a lot of things in BNI and BNI Connect are related to your position in BNI Connect. So generally speaking, most of the leadership team is going to have the same permissions. This is usually done intentionally so that, even though the president isn't responsible for entering the POMS report, let's say the vice president goes out on vacation for a couple of weeks, they usually have the permission to do so, so the chapter doesn't fall behind on their statistics. So it's a good idea to know how to do all of these different things, even if you're not the one that's going to be performing them most of the time. Secondly, you won't have a lot of these permissions until you are in the role. So until your regional office goes in and assigns you the role of, let's say, president or vice president or webmaster or growth coordinator, until that time, you won't have some of these icons. And then once you are officially in the position, then you will see those functions. So just keep that in mind. You may not see all of the icons that I see on my screen, again, depending on what your level is in BNI Connect. So let's look at some of the tasks that we can do. So right here under Create Email, that's what I want to start with, because this is possibly one of the most common things that you'll do, especially being on the leadership team. One thing that you usually do is you need to communicate with your chapter. Now, again, as a longtime member of BNI since about 2002, one thing I always struggled with before BNI Connect was getting an email out to my team and saying, hey, just a reminder, you know, we're going to be doing the BNI game this week, or whatever it might have been that I needed to remind my chapter about. I'd always have to go to my Outlook and pretty much hit reply all to whatever the last message was. Never went to all the right people. So sometimes it went to people that were no longer in the chapter, or people that had joined the chapter that had not been put in the system yet, or whatever it might be. Never went to the right people. So what this email my chapter function is it gives you a distribution list of all of the people in your chapter. So it's always current, so it always has the newest people that have joined, that their applications have been entered, and it has removed all the people that have left. Much more reliable than hitting reply all to the last message. You just have to copy these, so highlight them, Control-C for copy. Now you are going to use your own email program. So just, I happen to use Outlook, so I would take these and put them all, by the way, into the BCC line. The reason we put it in the BCC line is it does cut down on the possibility of it being caught for spam. It also means that if somebody forwards this out, people won't have their email addresses out there on the internet. It also cuts down just on the number of reply alls. So when people hit reply all and say, yeah, I got it, yeah, I got it, yeah, I got it, that tends to make people upset, because they're instead of getting one email, they're getting like 12 emails. This also means that if you're using your own email program, you can track it through your own email software as well. There's a couple of other things here under Create Email. Very quickly, a wonderful tool for your chapter that's also part of the visitor process is the visitor invitation. And this is a great way to get your chapter engaged in inviting visitors. And a lot of times members, they just struggle with, how do I invite somebody to a chapter meeting? Oftentimes they just don't know what to say to that incoming member. So this tool is great for getting that invitation out there and saying the right things. It also gives the visitor a chance to RSVP for your chapter meeting. It's really easy to use. You just hit email visitor invitation and fill out a couple of quick fields here, and it's going to take those fields, it's going to merge them into an email and send it out to that visitor. Keep in mind, we are not a cold call organization. You should never be sending an invitation to someone who is not expecting it. So this really should be the second time that somebody has heard about this. For example, you go to a networking event, you say, hey, you want to come to my chapter meeting? Do you mind if I send you an invite? And then you send this invitation. So here's how this works. Now, if you want to see how it works, log into BNI Connect and send one to yourself right now to see what it looks like. That's what I'm going to do. So let's say I'm just going to be inviting John Smith from Smith Co. and the email address, and again, I'm going to use my own, and then a personal message. The personal message will appear at the top of the form. So here is the invite I promised you. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Okay, then I click send. It's, again, going to wrap this up in a nice little package. And it has already arrived with my typo and everything. Here is the invite I promised you. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. And there it is. So it then has, how will you grow your business in 2016? It has some nice information pertaining to BNI. It has a special website that was designed just for this process that If they click on it, we'll tell them more about BNI. It has some nice testimonials and some videos about a BNI chapter up in Alaska, all different contact spheres and how well BNI is working for them. And then they also have the opportunity to RSVP. And if they click on the RSVP link, the cool part about this is it will bring them to your chapter page. So I happen to send an invitation for one of my test chapters in Antarctica, the Burr chapter up in the Shiver region. So this is sending an invitation to that particular chapter so they can RSVP to that particular chapter. They can choose any future meeting date, and they just fill out the form. And anybody that's ever filled out anything online knows how to do that. Invited by Alf Newman and EKW 32. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And the cool part about this is that if you can get your members to utilize this function, a couple of cool things happen. Number one, that visitor just gets a registration message. So they are now officially registered to visit that meeting. Now this changes the mentality for the visitor. They're not thinking, oh yeah, it's just another networking meeting. Nobody's going to care if I don't show up. This now means that they are expected to show up at the meeting. The other thing from a leadership team perspective is that you guys will all get a notification about it. So for example, Alfred E. Newman, he is one of the leadership team people in my test chapter here. He just got a notification saying, by the way, a John Smith is confirmed to visit your chapter meeting. Please be prepared to welcome him. And it has all the contact information for John Smith so that we can give him a call. In the next release, which should be coming in the July timeframe, this will also include who invited them to the meeting. So that's not available right now, but that will be available in about a month and a half or so. All right, so that brings us into this visitor process. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into this because we also have a webinar dedicated to the visitor process, but a couple of quick things that you need to know. Once a visitor is pre-registered, it makes it a lot easier for the visitor host team, whether it's the visitor host or the secretary treasurers, to record the visitors that attended the meeting. And this is great because rather than have to sit there and enter all of the visitors from the chicken scratch on the sign-in sheet, if they RSVP'd, they're already in there. So the way to do this from a visitor host perspective is we go to Manage Visitors here, and we can go to Manage Registered Visitors and mark attendance. So now I can just search for all of the visitors. I can search by a date range, for example. Let's say I want to see how many visitors were registered for last week's meeting. Oh, there were none. I guess everybody's registered for this week's meeting. So here we have John Smith that's registered twice because I have done 2 demos of this. But let's say that somebody did register twice and you need to remove it. I could just click the delete button here. And now that registration has been deleted. Otherwise, I can go in and click Edit. Now, let's say that John Smith calls up and says, hey, I can't make the meeting next week. You can change the registration date to the following week or the week after or the week after that without having to re-enter all of that information again. The other thing you could do is to update any of the details. And then if the person actually did show up to the meeting, all the visitor host has to do now is click on Visitor Attended. Rather than type it all out again, they just click Visitor Attended. Another option appears that says Add Visitor to Palms. And what that means is that Alfred Newman here, he's the person that invited him, will Alfred Newman get credit in the Palms report for inviting that visitor? And this is a very important distinction because this will affect certain other statistical reports in the system. So obviously we do want to give our members credit for inviting visitors, but we want to make sure it's only the first time and also only for qualified visitors. So if a visitor has come back a second time, a third time, a fourth time, it's okay to, put that into the database, but we don't necessarily want to give, Alfred Newman here credit 3, 4, 5 times for the same visitor, because what's going to happen is that's going to lower the chapter traffic lights score. One of the metrics for chapter traffic lights is that we're measuring the conversion ratio, how many visitors turn into members. And if the same visitor is marked 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the POMS report, it is going to lower that ratio. So I click on visitor attended, add to POMS. I then verify who invited them. If I have any additional details, I can fill those out, or if it's complete, that's great. And the final choice I have to make is whether or not I will send a follow-up email. And again, there's some times when you may not want to send the follow-up email. For example, if it's their second, third, fourth, fifth visit, that may become a redundant email. Or if, let's say, that you are a little bit behind on getting this process done, and maybe it's 2, 3, 4 weeks later, that would kind of be an embarrassing thing to send out a, hey, thanks for visiting recently, and it wasn't all that recent. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Now what happens is that this visitor is no longer in our registered visitor database, and they are now in our people that have come to our chapter visitor database. If the person had not pre-registered, then we can always click on Add Visitor and fill out the form from scratch. So we have a couple of questions. Catherine says, so a visitor only counts for the first 1 visit or 2? So the policy is that a visitor can only visit twice without submitting an application. However, from a credit perspective, a member should only get credit in the POMS report for the first visit. Does that make sense, Catherine? So there's a difference between kind of the policy and then also what we're giving for credit. All right, so excellent. Thank you, Catherine. Good question. Marie says, am I suggesting that the visitor host person in charge of the sign-in sheet print out a report each week to save the pre-registered visitors from signing in at all? How do we get their tick on the private box allowing us to email them or otherwise in the future? So Marie, I'll show you that report in just a second, but yes, when there is once visitors have pre-registered, there is a report that you can print out where you can just check off their names in order to bring that back and use that as the attendance sheet. So I can show you that as soon as we get to the reports in a second. That be okay, Marie? All right. Any other questions on visitors? So once we're in the visitors here, if I go back to operations, so there's manage registered visitors, so that's before a meeting, and then there's also manage visitors after a meeting. So we have our pre-visitor database, and then we have our post-visitor database. All right. So again, that's a quick overview of the visitor process. Again, we do a webinar dedicated to the visitor process if you'd like to check out that recording. And Marie, I'll tell you what, let me just pop over to that report now. So if I go to the reports menu, again, we'll come back to reports in just a second, but there are a ton of reports in the system. If we scroll down to the bottom, there is a visitor registration report where I can check out all the registered visitors, and I deleted that one, so let me go ahead and open this up a little bit to see if I can capture some additional visitors. Of course, this is my test chapter. Hey, there we go. All right, so we do have a number of visitors here, so you could basically print this out as it is if you wanted to, and use this as a sign-in sheet, or you can always export this if you'd like to make it a little bit more fancy. And then once you have it in Excel, again, you can use this information here in order to kind of create a fancier sign-in sheet where you could also have a if you needed to in your particular area, have a "we may contact you by email" checkbox or something like that. So does that answer your question, Marie? Awesome. All right, let's go back to the operations menu and look at about 3 or 4 more things down here. So the next part of this that we're going to take a look at here is the meeting management. There's 2 major things here, first of which is the entering of the weekly POMS report. This is the bread and butter of the statistics for BNI in general worldwide. And then we also have the speaker rotation. So let's look at the POMS summary. So you can, if you ever need to view any individual POMS report, so there's the reports, the summary POMS reports and the reports where you can look at, the cumulative reports for any length of time, but the view POMS summary will allow you to look at any individual POMS reports. So all I need to do is click on View POMS Summary. I can choose any date range I'd like to. I can go back if I need to make a correction, for example, 5 years if I need to. And I can see all of the different reports that were entered, who entered them, and when they were entered. I can see the different statuses, whether they're completed or draft or a holiday meeting or whether they're discarded. In order to view any of these individual POMS reports, I just click on the word. So for example, this one that says completed, I can click on this. And this will show me this singular POMS report. Now this is my Burr chapter up in Antarctica, so there's not a whole lot of activity there, but I can still see that individual report. In addition to that, I can see what's called the SLIPS audit report, which will show me all of the online activity that week, and there are a bunch of slackers in the Burr chapter, so they haven't done any, entered any slips in online in BNI Connect. And if I needed to make corrections to this, I could always click the Unlock POMS button. Now to enter a POMS report, we have the opportunity to click on Enter POMS. So in order to enter the weekly POMS report, I'm going to click on Enter POMS. The first thing that you're presented with is all of the visitors that have visited the chapter and when they visited. When a visitor is entered into BNI Connect, they're not automatically put into the POMS report. There is an approval process. So first the visitor host says, yes, this person showed up and I think that the person should get credit in the POMS report. However, usually the vice president, they're the master of the POMS report. So they have to give the final okay and say, yep, you know what? John Smith did show up. It was his first visit and I want to make sure I give this person credit. So we can actually see here a possible situation where John Smith showed up 2 weeks in a row. He showed up on the 22nd and he showed up on the 29th. And as I had said before, we really only want to give credit for the first time that a person shows up to the meeting. So here, what we probably would want to do is say, hey, John Smith, do we want to give Jeremy credit for that first visit? And we're going to say yes. Now, this John Smith will disappear from the list, and only the second one is here. Do we want to give Alfred E. Newman credit? No, we already gave that credit to Jeremy, so we're going to say no in this case. Now, it says the visitor has not been added to the POMS. However, they still stay in the visitor database, so that their contact information and everything remain in the system. They just won't have been added to the POMS report. All right, so I just choose what date I'm entering the POMS for. So let's say I'm doing the POMS report from last week, the 22nd. I click on Enter POMS. And it is going to give me a blank form that I can now fill out. Filling this out is as easy as doing a spreadsheet. Really, it's just entering in the different statistics. So usually the process is you take your stack of referral slips and one-to-one slips and et cetera, you take that stack home with you, you sort them into little piles for referrals and one-to-ones, et cetera, and then you count them up and enter them into the system. For anybody that doesn't know what these stand for, PALMS, P-A-L-M, P-A-L-M-S, that is the attendance. So P stands for present, A stands for absent, L is late, meaning you showed up after the start of the meeting. So if your meeting goes from 7 to 8:30 with 7 to 7:15 being open networking, late is actually 7:01 a.m. So it's after open networking has started. M is medical leave. Medical leave is not, I had a cold this week and didn't come to the meeting. Medical leave needs to be approved by the membership committee and is no longer than 6 weeks. It's usually when somebody has surgery or something like that, something major. S is substitutes. So you weren't at the meeting, but you did have a substitute there. So that's the different attendance possibilities: present, absent, late, medical, substitute. So the next 4 columns have to do with referrals. That's what the R stands for, referrals. G is given and R is received. So we have referrals given and referrals received. Then we have I and O. So an inside referral is a referral that passes between 2 members of the chapter. So in other words, a member of the chapter is utilizing the services of another member. For example, my accountant for my business is also a member of my chapter. When I first started using her, that was an inside referral. On the other hand, one of my clients needed a referral to a new accountant. So I gave them Christy, who's the accountant in my chapter, I gave them Christy's name. That would be an outside referral. So inside referral, 2 members are using each other's services in the chapter. An outside referral is when you introduce the person to somebody that is not a member of the chapter. All right, V is visitors. And we can see that we already have the 1 visitor here. And finally, we have one-to-ones and thank you for closed business. Now for CEUs, you do have to scroll over a little bit, and that's just because of these fixed width columns. And then it's just going to be a matter of, for example, Alfred E. Newman had an outside referral given to Albert Camus. So there's a 1 given and a 1 received. Let's say that Jamie Jones had 1 one-to-one with Ricky Martin. So I would put a 1 there. Thank you for closed business. So John Smith thanked Adam Sandler for producing $1,000 of business to his business. And Ms. Goodwin had 8 CEUs this week. Right, and that's all there is to it. You just go through and fill that out. Now, if your chapter is using the online slips in BNI Connect, this becomes a whole lot easier. All you have to do is take attendance because all the rest of the information is filled in automatically by the system. Down at the bottom, there's a couple of different options. So submit POMs, that means that I am certain that this information is correct. We're going to finalize it. It's now going to become part of all the statistics in the system, and we're good to go. The next one here, mark as holiday. So if your chapter ever doesn't meet for a week, let's say that it's Christmas or it's Thanksgiving or New Year's or whatever, you have a hurricane, God forbid, or something like that, and you can't meet that week. You still need to go into the system as quickly as possible, following when the meeting should have been, and go in and click on Mark as Holiday. What that'll do is that will take that meeting out of the statistics. So any statistics having to do with like per member, per meeting, like the traffic lights, that week won't be included in those statistics. It also means that if any online slips or visitors were entered, they would be pushed to the next meeting's statistics. Save as draft. Keep in mind there is a half-hour timeout in BNI Connect. So if I'm sitting here, we have a chapter of 50 people and I've got like 400 slips to count that week and I'm entering them, I'm putting them in, and I get a phone call. Make sure you hit that save as draft because if I come back a half hour later and the system will have timed me out and I will have lost everything. So that's what save as draft is. And discard, if you royally messed it up and you need to start all over again, you can discard it and do that. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. It's going to give us a quick preview of what we are submitting. And it is now submitted successfully. And there it is. And that is the POMS report. So very quickly, a couple of other things that we have left to show in the operations menu. Then we're going to go on and look at some reports for the remaining 10 to 15 minutes or so. Speaker rotation. You do want to be entering your speakers into BNI Connect. You do that very quickly by just going to Meeting Management, View Edit Speakers. You can only go forward entering speakers, as this was originally designed just as a notification system. So I can enter the speaker, let's say, for June 29th, which is a couple of days from now. Oh, and it looks like Jamie Jones is already entered, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Assign Speaker. Let's enter the person for July 6th. And let's say Art Garfunkel is going to be speaking that day, and he will sing his 10-minute presentation. All right, and then Art Garfunkel will be listed. A couple of reasons why it's a good idea to do this. First of all, the speaker and the secretary-treasurer will get a notification about the upcoming speaker. So 6 days before the upcoming meeting or a day after your meeting, the next speaker will get a reminder saying, hey, at our next meeting in 6 days, you will be the speaker, so be prepared, bring a door prize, et cetera, et cetera. They'll get reminded a second time 3 days before the meeting, and at that time, the secretary-treasurer will also be reminded so that they can be sure to pull a bio and things like that for the upcoming speaker. The other reason is that on the regional website, so if I click this regional website button in the upper right-hand corner, that's going to take me out to our regional website. So that happens to be Rhode Island here. And if I look at my chapter webpage, you'll see that the speakers are automatically listed down at the bottom of the page. So the next 4 weeks worth of speakers will be listed there. So this is just one extra little bit of visibility that the upcoming speaker has, especially because Google really likes it when your name is listed on websites. All right, you can also delete a speaker if you need to. One thing that you can't do is change the date of a speaker. A lot of secretary-treasurers come back to us and say, well, this person canceled, so now we need to shift everybody up a week. And my recommendation is that if somebody is canceling or if somebody just needs to not speak on a particular week, or maybe they leave the chapter or something, that rather than shift everybody, you just replace them with somebody else. One of the reasons we do say that is people hear from when they're speaking. They end up putting it in the calendar. So if a change happens in the next couple of weeks, they may not be paying attention during that part of the meeting because they already knew when they were speaking. So you end up running into more problems when you try to shift everybody around rather than just replacing them with somebody else. That being said, it has been taken into a consideration for a future release. All right, so that's the speakers, and mentors and mentees are pretty much the exact same process. If we're going to go to the mentoring program here, and on the right-hand side, we can assign or view the mentors and mentees. Now, what this does, the mentoring program, when I assign a mentor and a mentee, so let's say that I'm going to, starting on the 29th, we want to make sure that Harvey Keitel is going to be the mentor for Marky Mark. And once I click submit, that means that on the 29th for the next 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how it's set up in your region, but the next 6 to 8 weeks, they will both get an email saying, hey, you guys are part of the mentoring program. Congratulations. Here's your agenda. Today, you're going to talk about the benefits of a great 60-second presentation. And next week, they get another email saying, okay, this week, you want to make sure that you've attended your member success program. And then the next week, you're going to make sure that, have you prepared for your 10-minute presentation, so on and so forth. So it's a great series to make sure that a new member gets involved with the chapter right away and can start forming relationships with the people there. All right, and that's the basis of the operations menu. Do we have any questions at all before I switch over to the reports for the last 10 minutes or so? Any questions at all? And no worries, I will leave plenty of time for questions at the end as well, although we are scheduled for a 1-hour webinar today. I am always happy to stay on these webinars until every single question has been answered. The only silly question is the unasked question. So, all right, I don't see any questions yet, so let's go ahead and move on to the reports menus. So I'm going to go to reports. Now, here's the deal with reports. Reports are read only, right? So data entry doesn't happen in the reports section. With that in mind, it also means that by all means, go through and just go and click on every single report and take a look at them, see what they do. I'm not going to have time today to go through all 22 or so reports that are here. I'm just going to highlight, probably about 5 or 6 of my favorite reports that I think are very, very helpful to leadership teams. However, just go ahead and click through them and click on them and see what they do. If you have any questions about them, you can always click the little question mark that precedes the report. That will take you over to the help site where it will explain what that report is all about. Marie had a quick question. She says, after the speakers are registered, where can you see the list of upcoming speakers? So there's actually 2 places you can see the upcoming speakers. So back under the operations menu, so I'm going to go back to the operations menu real quick. If I go to meeting management and I go to view edit speakers, I can just choose a date, any date really, and I can see all of the speakers that were registered from that point on. So this isn't really a report per se, it just shows me a list. However, there is a report as well. So if I go to chapter reports, here's the list of reports down the left-hand side. And you can see it's a pretty extensive list here. But one of the reports, if we go about halfway down the column, it says speaker report. So I can choose, once again, the date range. So I want to look now and I want to look through the end of next month to see all the speakers. I click go, and here we go. I can see the speakers and what date they will be speaking. So does that help, Marie? All right, so while we're on the topic of speakers, again, let's run through a couple of these reports. Oh, Marie had another question. She says, I do get those, but I thought for some reason they would show up for anyone to see easily, like on the Facebook page or something silly like that. So we don't have a connection to Facebook, so it's not going to be able to show up on the Facebook page. However, it does show up on your chapter website. So if you click on, again, regional website, that will take you to your regional website. Go to find a chapter right up here along the top and do a search for your chapter. For example, my chapter is the Wakefield chapter. If I go to my chapter website, right here at the bottom of the screen, it shows all of the upcoming speakers for the next 4 weeks. So that is on the public internet. So, again, that is being indexed by Google and other search engines. All right, awesome. All right, so while we're on the subject of speakers, one of the requirements is that you can only be put into the speaker rotation once you've taken your member success program. So what's an easy way to find out whether or not the person that you want to schedule has taken the member success program? I'm going to actually switch to my own chapter here because this will give us a little bit better data. But under the very first report here is the member training report. Now this is fairly straightforward. We can run and find out who's taken which trainings. So I can say for the last 6 months who's taken which training, and this will show me all the people that have taken various training. However, what you really want to know, especially as Secretary Treasurer, is who hasn't taken a member success program. So for here, what I do is go down to Member Success Program on the list and choose Show Never Attended. Show Never Attended. I'm going to click Go. And now I know that when I am scheduling my speakers, I know that I really need to work with these 5 people to make sure that they go and they take a member success program. It also lets me know when they joined. Now, we're supposed to take that member success program within the first 60 days of membership, preferably within the first 30 days. But we can see that a couple of people have fallen behind on that. So as a leadership team person, especially as secretary treasurer or vice president, I want to make sure that I'm talking to these members to make sure that they get scheduled for their member success program. Now the next report in the list here, it's going to look like I'm going through all the reports. Trust me, I'm not. I'm going to skip around, but the first couple of reports here really are the bread and butter here. So the roster report, fairly straightforward. It is going to tell us the obvious of who holds various positions. Now if you remember what I had said earlier, various functions are accessible depending on your position in the system. So if your visitor host comes to you and says, oh, by the way, I tried to enter the visitors, but I can't, that option's not available, go to your roster report and make sure that they're actually listed as the visitor host. Because if they're not listed as the visitor host, then they probably don't have the permission necessary to enter visitors, which means just give your director consultant or your regional office a call and they can help out with that. Down below, it'll show you how many members are in your chapter, as well as all of the members, their classification, company name, phone number. Now, that's all very basic stuff. What I really like in this report is the fact that it shows you a quick 90-day report of basically how they're doing in the chapter. This is really, really important to me because what I want to look for as a leadership team is I definitely want to look for people that haven't had a lot of one-to-ones in the last 90 days and also who haven't given or received any or many referrals. Those are the people that I really want to reach out to them and try to help them out. You know, maybe they're struggling with setting up one-to-ones, or maybe nobody's asked them for a one-to-one. A lot of times it's the newer members that are stuck in that category, and you really want to reach out to them and make sure they feel like they're a part of the chapter and schedule a one-to-one with them. All right, the membership dues report. Again, a fairly straightforward report. Here's a couple of things about it. It's going to, once again, show you the members, their industry, things like that. We'll also show you what their status is, whether they're active or late. At the bottom of the report, it will also show you people that have left the chapter in the last, since the beginning of last month, any members that are late, and any new members that have been brought into the chapter. Up at the top, you will find the due date, and the first couple of people will have their terms suspended. Those are the officers, which means that while they are serving in that position, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, their dues are frozen. But then the people in bold, now the people in bold should be in the renewal process already. So the people on July 1st, that's only a couple of days from now, they should have their renewal turned in. And that renewal should be up to the regional office, or if you are a chapter that processes those yourself, you should be processing those. They should be well in that process now. And the ones in August are the ones in the pipeline, and you should be in the membership committee review process with them as well. One of the hidden elements of this report is that those two things are, again, the obvious. What we really want to be looking at as well, especially from a membership committee standpoint and from a vice president standpoint, is the people that are about 6 months down the line. So, you know, right now we're about to be in July. So let's count out 6 months: August, September, October, November, December, January. So it's these people in December and January that we really want to be looking out for. So in my chapter here, this is from, you know, Christy on down to Ron. But those are the people that in 6 months they're going to be making a decision whether or not to renew their membership. 6 months is enough time to turn something around if it's not working. The people that are in bold, that's more just keeping up with paperwork. The people that are 6 months out, you know, if they're struggling, if they're not doing well, or they're doing extremely well, we don't want them to burn out. Those are the people that we want to make sure that we're working with to, you know, if there's a possibility to give them a good experience, we want to be doing that. If you're a region that is using the online renewal process, Then you will also see this member renewal, which gives you the opportunity to pre-approve a member. I'll go through the online renewal process in just a couple of days, so feel free to join us for that. All right, so next one down, meeting notes report. This is a great tool for being able to help your chapter give more referrals. Again, give more referrals. This is just a very simple and quick way that your chapter can take notes during the meeting. So what you do is you just take this and you print it out. And you want to print out about however many people you have in your chapters plus a couple. So in my chapter, we have 48 members. We want to basically print out about 55, 60 of these on a regular basis, and it gives a place for the members to take notes during the meeting. So especially with a big chapter, there's no way you're going to remember exactly what everybody asked for during the chapter meeting. So make sure everybody has one of these that they can write down a couple of notes. And you know what, even if they leave it on the table at the end of the meeting, or they leave it on the front seat of their car, or whatever it might be, the act of writing things down helps people remember better. Again, this will help them give better referrals. All right, the summary POMS report, bread and butter, some hidden things about this. You can run this report for any time period you want to. So if I want to go back, 10 years, I can do that. I can go back to 2006 and run the report for the last 10 years. The other thing is that you can choose whether or not you're going to show the dropped member names. So their contributions will appear in the sum total. However, it will hide the names by default just because it could be a really long list of people. One of the hidden elements of this report is that once in a while, I like to run it with the dropped member names. One of the things I've heard a lot over BNI is that when you're in BNI for life. So you may be in between chapters at the moment, or you may be in between memberships at the moment, but there's a lot of people in BNI that they might have left, but it would be great if they came back. This is a good way to go through and take a look at people that were in the chapter that aren't in the chapter anymore, but were at one point, like Gregory Bressler here. He hasn't been in the chapter for a couple of years, but if and when the builder position ever opens up, he was an awesome member. So I might want to go back and say, hey, Greg, you used to be a member of this chapter. You were an awesome member. Would you be interested in coming back? Now, there might be some members you don't want back as well, but that's a different story. All right, so we're just about at the top of the hour. So just a couple of other quick reports. There's an absence report. There's the personal POMS report. That's great for membership committees. You can look at a particular person in the chapter and run their personal POMS report. For the secretary treasurers, there's the member details report. So before a chapter meeting, and where they're going to be giving their keynote or spotlight presentation, their 8-minute presentation, 10-minute presentation, you can click on View Member Bio, and as long as they've filled out their profile in BNI Connect, you don't have to go and chase them. This is the exact same bio that we've been using for years and years and years. So rather than chase them down for a piece of paper, you can pull their bio from here, again, as long as they've filled out BNI Connect. There's visitor reports, the visitor registration report for upcoming visitors, the chapter traffic lights report. Again, we don't have time to go through them all today. Just go through and click on them when you have a chance. And if you have any questions whatsoever, just shoot us an email, support@bniconnect.com. We'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Now, before we go, there's 2 other things I want to show you very quickly. If I go back to the home page, notice that there's also a My Network and chapter below My BNI Business. Now, the My Network, this is where kind of the social media stuff is. This is also where you'd find regional documents, and you'll have a list of upcoming events as well. But below that, there's the chapter, and what this is a customizable shortcut menu that you can use to keep all of your favorite functions right at your fingertips. So rather than having to go to, for example, operations, chapter, create email, email my chapter, you can put that right here so that all you have to do is go to chapter, email my chapter, and it's basically 2 clicks away instead of about 6 clicks away. Now you can customize this by clicking on Configure. Everything on the left-hand side here is what's going to be in my list, and everything on the right-hand side is because I'm zoomed in. I apologize. Let me zoom out of this real quick before I go into that function. So everything on the left-hand side is your list of active things in your list, and you can drag and drop these in order to reorder them, or click the X to get rid of them. And then let's say I want email my chapter here, and I want that to be at the top of my list. I can then go ahead and save this by clicking Submit. And when I close out of it, my shortcut menu has been updated, and now email my chapter is right there at the top. Of course, if I go back to my BNI business, this will go back to all of the slips and my personal information. All right, on that note, we are at the top of the hour. So what I'd like to do is to first thank everybody for being here today. Reminder that this is being recorded. I will make it available as soon as possible on our support site. Now you can get to our support site by clicking on this question mark in the upper right-hand corner of BNI Connect. That will take you over to the support site, and once you get there, you can click on live and recorded webinars, sign up for our next series in July by clicking on upcoming webinars, or you can view any of the recordings month by month under recorded webinars. You can also click on any of the question marks in front of any of the options here. So for example, if you wanted to teach your chapter, a great education moment might be to teach them how to do the online referrals. You can do that by clicking on the question mark in front of Submit Referral Slips. That will take you to the help document specifically for that. You can play the video at your chapter meeting or print this out, or just use this as a basis for an education moment to get your chapter on board with using the online slips, for example. All right, so do we have any questions? Any questions at all? And by the way, a good referral for me is to please let people know about these webinars. Our next webinar is going to be tomorrow at the same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to be meeting at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. This is back to a half-hour webinar where we're going to be talking about the chapter goals. How do you submit your goals? How do you enter them? How do you follow through with them throughout the year? And then the last one in our series is going to be the online renewals for leadership teams on the 29th. That is Wednesday. Then we start the whole series over in July. We start out with our completing your profile on July 11th, and then we do the slips on the 12th and connecting with other members on the 13th. All right, I'm not seeing any questions at all. Any questions? All right, so Patty says, how do you enter a member status report to change a member who is not renewing? So that one, unfortunately, Patty, is more of a process question that you're going to work with your regional office on that. I'm not sure what area you're in, Patty. Are you in Massachusetts? Are you in, so you're in Maine, Augusta, Maine, I'm assuming, or Augusta, Georgia. So for that, what you probably want to do is click this regional website button up in your upper right-hand corner. All right, and click on the contact link that's there and send a message to your regional admin or your director consultant. They'll tell you what the process is in your particular region. Again, it's slightly different region by region. Some you're going to be reporting that to your director consultant. Some you're going to be sending a report into your regional administrator. Some regions you actually process that yourself, but again, that's something to check in with your office on that one. I apologize. Does that help a little bit, Patty? And if you're having trouble contacting them, just shoot me an email, support@bniconnect.com, and I'll be happy to help you out. All right, do we have any other questions? Any other questions at all? All right, on that note, I'm going to say thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you all on a future webinar. Happy connecting, everyone.